My name is Charlotte Miller, and I'm 30 years old. I work in finance. Stable career, stable apartment, stable life, at least on paper. For most of my life, I thought stability meant I was safe. That family was the one place I could always return to, no matter what the world did to me. I grew up believing family was the foundation, the one thing you protected, the thing you never gave up on. And I lived by that belief like it was a contract written into my bones. I did my part. I did more than my part. I paid, I patched, I fixed, I smiled through disappointment, and I called it love. I told myself this is what an older sister does. I told myself this is what a good daughter is. I believed we were unshakable. But 2 years ago, on Christmas Eve, that belief didn't crack. It shattered. Snow fell heavy that night, thick enough to turn the streetlights into soft glowing halos. The neighborhood looked like one of those holiday postcards people send when they want to pretend their lives are perfect. I carried a bottle of wine in one hand, something expensive, something my dad would never buy for himself. A small gift, a peace offering, a tradition. The moment I opened the front door, warmth rushed out and wrapped around me. The smell of roasted chicken, cinnamon cookies, mashed potatoes, and just a hint of star anise. Like comfort, like childhood, like an illusion trying to hold me hostage. Mom was in the kitchen, busy in that frantic way she always got during the holidays, muttering to herself about timing and perfection and how nothing could be late because family is coming. Then my younger sister Hannah walked in, dragging a small suitcase behind her like she'd been on some glamorous trip instead of disappearing for weeks without warning. She smiled when she saw me, barely. It was so faint I couldn't tell if it was real or just something her face did automatically when it recognized me. I set the wine on the dining table, brushed snow off my coat, and walked toward my father. He was sitting in his favorite armchair by the fireplace, glass of wine in hand, staring into the flames like they owed him answers. "Dad," I said softly, holding up the bottle, "I got this for you." I waited, like a child waits for approval even when she swears she's grown. He glanced at the label, then nodded once. "This is a good one." That was it. No smile, no warmth, just a verdict. I wasn't surprised. My dad never gave compliments like gifts. He gave them like receipts, proof that you earned a moment of being tolerated. I told myself I'd made peace with that. Dinner started like it always did. Laughter, clinking glasses, Mom telling stories about neighbors, Hannah talking too loudly about her plans, like she was always on the verge of something big. It felt familiar, almost peaceful. And that's what makes betrayal so vicious. It doesn't walk in wearing a warning sign. It waits until you relax. Halfway through dinner, Dad set his glass down. At first, it seemed normal. Then he cleared his throat, and the air changed. "We've made a decision," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut clean through every conversation like a knife. Mom put her utensils down. Hannah leaned back in her chair, arms crossing, like she'd been expecting this moment. Like she'd already watched the scene in her head and knew exactly how it ended. Dad's gaze swept the room, then stopped on me. "All of our inheritance will go to Hannah." Silence slammed into the table. I felt it physically, like a cold hand wrapping around my spine, even though the fireplace was still burning bright. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. What? Dad didn't flinch. "Your mother and I have thought this through." I turned to Mom. She didn't look shocked. Not even a little. I turned to Hannah. She lifted her wine glass and slowly swirled the dark red liquid inside, savoring it like a victory. My voice came out calm in a way that scared even me. "Isn't it a little early to read out a will?" Dad stared me down. "We wanted you to know beforehand, to avoid misunderstandings later." Mom's voice was soft, gentle enough to sound reasonable if you ignored the blade inside every word. "You already have a job, a car, a stable life. Hannah has nothing. You're the older sister. You should let her have it." Let her have it. Like inheritance was a sweater I could loan her. Like my place in this family was optional. The anger rose slow and hot. "Let her have it? Are you serious?" Dad sighed, like I was an inconvenience. "Charlotte, don't make this a big deal. This is our decision." "Don't make this a big deal," I repeated, almost laughing, except there was no humor in it. Hannah tilted her head, the corner of her mouth lifting. "Why are you so tense?" she said, still swirling her wine. "It's not like you need the money." My grip tightened around my chair. "You think this is about money?" She shrugged, eyes empty, indifferent, like I was throwing a tantrum over something petty. And in that moment, something inside me rearranged itself. Everything I'd done, everything I'd sacrificed, every time I'd stepped in to fix what Hannah broke. It was never love. It was utility. I stood up. The chair scraped the floor, sharp, ugly, loud. The sound made Mom flinch. "Charlotte, where are you going?" she asked, like she couldn't believe I'd move without permission. I grabbed my coat, didn't look back. "Home," I said. "The one I bought myself. Not this house I keep paying to pretend belongs to me." I walked out, and when the door slammed behind me, it felt like the sound of a lifetime closing. I drove through the night, snow streaking across my windshield like the world was trying to erase the road. Mom and Dad said I had everything. Mom and Dad said Hannah had nothing. Mom and Dad said I should give way. But what about everything I'd already given? 5 years earlier, when the roof started leaking in the dead of winter, I sent $10,000 so they wouldn't have water dripping into their living room. 2 years earlier, before that Christmas, this house was days away from being seized by the bank because my parents secretly took out a mortgage to fund Hannah's little dream cafe, a cafe that barely survived 7 months. I paid $50,000 in to save that house. Every month, I sent $1,000 for bills. Never late. Not once. For Dad's birthday, I bought the premium fishing kit he'd always wanted but never dared to buy. For Mom's birthday, the modern oven she'd been eyeing for years. They hugged me, called me their pride, their rock. And Hannah? I gave her $20,000 for a fashion boutique she swore would be different. 6 months later, it vanished. Just like the cafe. Just like every get-rich scheme she'd ever chased. And now, after all that, they sat across from me and told me I was irrelevant. I got home while it was still early. Somewhere along the drive, my anger cooled into something worse. Calm. That eerie, empty calm that shows up when your heart has finally stopped bargaining. I made coffee, the smell rising like a memory that didn't comfort me anymore. I took the mug outside, sat down, and stared into the quiet. No calls, no texts, no fake concern. Just silence. And clarity. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and canceled every automatic payment. Electricity, water, insurance, groceries, one by one. Then I canceled the $1,000 monthly support. If their house belonged to them, they could decide what to do with it. And my money belonged to me. I scrolled to my contacts. Mom, Dad, Hannah. And without hesitating, I blocked them all. No more messages, no more calls, no more ties. I leaned back, closed my eyes. And old memories came rushing in. Sharp, unwanted, accusing. Because the truth was, I remembered when things used to be fair. When we were kids, and Mom and Dad tried to split everything evenly so neither of us felt left out. So when did it change? When Hannah started begging for money in middle school because everyone else has it? When she failed class after class and they soothed her with, "As long as you try"? When she slid into college through special admissions while I studied until my eyes burned to earn scholarships? Somewhere along the way, their love turned into a safety net for her and a leash for me. I used to believe if I worked hard enough, they'd finally see me. But on Christmas Eve, I realized something terrifying. They saw me perfectly. They just didn't care. And I thought that was the end. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, they came to my door. 2 weeks of silence passed. No calls, no texts, no apologies pretending to be concerned. I almost convinced myself they'd finally taken the hint. Then one evening, as I was reviewing spreadsheets on my laptop, there was a knock at my door. Not a polite knock, not a hesitant one. A relentless, aggressive pounding, like whoever was on the other side already felt entitled to be let in. I froze. Something in my chest tightened before my brain caught up. I didn't need to look through the peephole to know who it was. Family always knocks like they own the place. I stood, closed my laptop slowly, and walked toward the door. When I opened it, the hallway light spilled in, and there they were. Mom, Dad, and Hannah, standing shoulder to shoulder like a united front, like I was the enemy. Mom broke the silence first. Her voice was cold, clipped. "Charlotte, we need to talk." I didn't move aside. I didn't invite them in. "About what?" I asked evenly. Dad stepped forward, his jaw tight, eyes sharp, with the kind of disappointment he liked to weaponize. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" I met his gaze without blinking. "You'll have to be more specific." Mom clenched her hands together, took a breath like she was preparing to deliver a verdict. "Why did you cancel all the payments?" Hannah let out a short laugh, tilting her head with mock curiosity. "Did you really think you could do that without telling anyone?" I stared at the three of them. Not one of them asked how I'd been. Not one of them mentioned Christmas. Not one of them apologized. They weren't here because they missed me. They were here because the money stopped. I let the silence stretch until it grew uncomfortable. Then I spoke. "The person you chose to inherit everything," I said calmly, "should be responsible for you." Dad's fists clenched. "We brought you into this world." "And raised you," Mom added quickly. "You have responsibilities to this family." I laughed. It slipped out before I could stop it. Dry, hollow, stripped of humor. Responsibilities? I asked. Then why doesn't Hannah have any? Mom snapped back instantly. She's your younger sister. She doesn't have a career yet. When she does, she'll help us. A future promise, a convenient excuse. I nodded slowly. I'm not interested in hypotheticals. Dad's voice dropped, thick with anger. You think you can just abandon us? I held the door open wider. I think you should leave before I call the police. That finally did it. Mom froze. Dad stared at me like I was a stranger. Hannah's smirk vanished, replaced by disbelief. For a moment, none of them moved. Then Dad stepped back, shaking his head like I'd betrayed him beyond repair. You've changed, he muttered. No, I said quietly. I stopped pretending. They left, and as the door closed, I felt nothing. No guilt, no regret. Just confirmation. Nearly 2 years passed. 2 years without birthdays. 2 years without holidays. 2 years without pretending we were something we weren't. I threw myself into work. Early mornings, late nights, new projects, promotions that felt hollow but necessary. I told myself distance was healing. Then, 3 months ago, I pulled into my parking spot after work and saw them, standing outside my building, with suitcases. I didn't get out of the car right away. I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, staring. Mom looked tired. Dad looked irritated. Hannah looked bored, scrolling through her phone like she was waiting for a ride. Mom stepped forward when she saw me. Her voice softened, rehearsed. We need to stay with you for a few days. I leaned against my car, arms crossed. Why? The house needs repairs, she said quickly. We have nowhere else to go. I didn't blink. Get a hotel. Dad's face darkened. Don't be like this. We're your parents. I met his eyes. Ask Hannah. The shift was instant. Mom stiffened. Dad hesitated. Hannah finally looked up. You left everything to her, I continued evenly. That makes her responsible. Dad's voice snapped. You selfish, ungrateful... I got back into my car and shut the door. I didn't hear the rest. That night I didn't go home. I went to Ryan's place. My boyfriend. The one person who had seen me slowly unlearn the habit of apologizing for existing. We sat on his balcony, beers in hand, cold wind slipping between the railing. I told him everything. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said softly, I don't think it's about repairs. I frowned. What do you mean? They're panicking, he said. That kind of panic doesn't come from a leaky roof. Something clicked. The next morning, I drove past my parents' house. No scaffolding, no workers, no signs of renovation. Just silence. And then a voice behind me. Charlotte, is that you? It was Mark, the neighbor I'd known since childhood. I heard my parents were fixing the house, I said carefully. Thought I'd check. Mark frowned, then chuckled. Fixing? No. They sold it last week. I froze. Sold it? Yeah, he said casually. To fund some investment for Hannah, I heard. The ground didn't crack. It disappeared. I smiled, thin, unreadable mids, and thanked him. And as I walked away, one thought echoed in my head. They weren't here for repairs. They were here because they had lost everything. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't confront them right away. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't storm back to demand answers like the old version of me would have. Instead, I did what I'd learned to do best. I verified. The moment I got to the office, I closed my door, sat down, and dialed Daniel, a friend from college who'd built a solid career in real estate. We'd helped each other before. He trusted me enough to be honest. Hey, I said, I need you to check something for me. He hesitated before even pulling records. That should have been my first warning. Charlotte, he said slowly, are you sure you want to know? I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. Just tell me. There was a pause, papers shuffled, a breath. After you cut off financial support, Daniel began, your parents didn't downsize. They didn't adjust spending. They took out a $300,000 loan, using the house as collateral. My fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. What did they do with it? Another pause, longer this time. They gave $250,000 to Hannah. I closed my eyes. For what? Crypto. Of course it was. Daniel let out a breath. It's gone, Charlotte, all of it. She lost everything in a few months. The remaining $50,000 barely kept them afloat. Interest payments, daily expenses. When the debt caught up, they sold the house for $500,000 just to clear what they owed. I thanked Daniel and hung up. Then I sat there, empty. They hadn't fallen because I abandoned them. They jumped, confident I'd catch them again. That afternoon, when I drove home and saw their suitcases still stacked near my building, I wasn't surprised. They didn't need repairs. They needed a new host. When Mom knocked on my door again, her tone had changed completely. Gone was the accusation. Gone was the guilt tripping. Now she sounded apologetic. "Charlotte," she said softly, eyes glossy, "I know there were misunderstandings. I regret how things turned out." Dad stood behind her, silent. Hannah avoided my gaze. I knew everything. And I said nothing, because I already had a plan. "You can stay," I said finally. 1 week. Relief washed over their faces like they'd just been rescued from drowning. Hannah smiled first. "You're the best sister ever." Mom exhaled shakily. Dad patted my shoulder like we'd made peace. They didn't see the calm in my eyes. They didn't know this was the last time I'd ever let them inside my life. That week, my apartment stopped feeling like mine. Mom rearranged the kitchen. Dad took over the couch like a throne. Hannah invited friends over without asking. I watched it all like an observer in my own life. Then Mom cornered me in the kitchen near the end of the week. "Could we stay a little longer?" she asked carefully. "The house still isn't ready." I smiled. "As long as you want." The room went still. Dad beamed. Mom looked relieved. Hannah practically bounced. They thought they'd won. They didn't realize they were standing on a trapdoor. Because 2 days later, I told them I was leaving for a 6-month business trip. "I'll send money every month," I said casually. They smiled like they'd hit the jackpot. What they didn't know was that I'd already bought a new place. What they didn't know was that Daniel was finalizing paperwork. What they didn't know was that I was done being their safety net. And in just a few hours, everything they thought they owned would be gone. 2 days later, I dragged 10 suitcases to the front door. Mom and Dad were in the living room, sipping tea, like they'd already settled into a new routine. Hannah lounged on the couch, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone as if my apartment were a free Airbnb. Dad noticed first. He set his cup down slowly. "Where are you going?" he asked, frowning. "And why are you taking so many suitcases?" I stopped and turned to them, calm, composed. "Oh," I said lightly. "Didn't I mention it? My company's sending me on a 6-month business trip." Mom blinked rapidly. 6 months? I nodded. "I'll send money every month. Make yourselves at home." The relief on their faces was immediate and nauseating. Mom laughed and squeezed my hand. "You're such a good daughter." Dad smiled with pride. Hannah exhaled like a weight had lifted. They didn't ask where I was going. They didn't ask if I was okay. They only heard money. I wasn't going anywhere. Not like they thought. I moved into my new place that same afternoon. A modest apartment. Nothing fancy, but clean, quiet, and untouched by their fingerprints. The previous owner had agreed to let me move in early. For the first time in years, I could breathe. I didn't unpack. I sat on the floor, leaned against the wall, and called Daniel. "All right," I said. "Do it." 2 hours later, my phone exploded. Calls, messages, voicemails stacking up faster than I could read them. Mom, Dad, Hannah. I ignored them all. The screen lit up again. Mom. "Charlotte, please pick up." "What do you mean the house is sold?" Hannah. "Where are you? Explain yourself." I laughed. Not loudly, not happily. Just a sharp, bitter sound that surprised even me. The 100th call came through. I answered. Mom screamed the moment I spoke. "Where the hell are you? What do you mean you sold the house?" I leaned back, voice calm. "So you found out." Dad roared in the background. "Where are we supposed to live?" Hannah shrieked. "You want us homeless?" I waited. Let them empty themselves out. Then I spoke. "I did exactly what Hannah did," I said evenly. "I mortgaged the house, invested the money, and lost it. The only option was to sell." Silence. Then Mom whispered, trembling, "Why didn't you talk to us first?" I laughed softly. "Did you talk to me?" Dad's voice cracked. "Are you getting revenge on your own family?" "No," I said. "I'm freeing myself." His last words were pure rage. "You're no daughter of mine." I smiled. "You got one thing right." I hung up. I changed my phone number that night, and I never looked back. 3 months have passed. No calls, no guilt, no fear. Just peace. Some people will say I was cruel, but cruelty is feeding off someone until there's nothing left. I didn't destroy my family. I escaped it. And for the first time in my life, I chose my